Judge not, that ye be not judged. For what judgment ye judge, it shall be measured against you. Let us pray. Our God and our Father, we've come to say thank you for one more day. We come thanking and rejoicing for the opportunity extended each of us to be part of this day. We pray, O God, that you bless us as we go through the ceremony. We pray for those who are on our way. We pray, Heavenly Father, that we continue to be mindful of the charge that we have a God to glorify. Help us, Heavenly Father, to also be mindful of the caveat, to trust in the Lord and lean not into our own understanding. For in all our ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct our paths. Bless us and make us a blessing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Philip A. Banks III, Associate Justice of the Honorable Supreme Court of Liberia, former Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Honorable Supreme Court of Liberia, our Honorable Distinguished Keynote Speaker, Councillor Frank Musadin, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Republic of Liberia, Dr. Atoni Bartholomew B. Coley, Chairperson, Independent Human Rights Commission of Liberia, other government officials present, the Honorable Kevin James and his team from INL of the State Department of the United States of America, and members of his team being the Honorable Ray Cobb and the Honorable Terry Barr. Dr. Gerard Merriman, Chief of Party of PAC. His Honor George Roosevelt Zewili, President and officers and other officers and members of the National Association of Trial Judges of Liberia. The Honorable John B.S. Davis, the third President of the Liberian Bank for Development and Investment, and President of the Liberia Bankers Association, who will be presenting on the topic de-dollarization, the financial and economic impact. Professor Councillor David A.B. Jala, Vice President for Legal Affairs and General Counsel of the University of Liberia and Chair of the Appellate Court Drafting Committee, former President of the Bar, Councillor Femi D. Cheru, former Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Republic of Liberia, and also former member of the former President of the Liberia National Bar Association, councillors, and also a twin, Cyril Jones, both of whom are also former President of the Liberia National Bar Association. Councillor T. Nibali Warner, Dean of the Louis Adogren School of Law. Our distinguished senior councillors of the Liberia National Bar Association who are present here, including Councillors Pearl Bamboo, Councillor Sewell M. Cooper, again, Councillor Cheru, Councillor Kwe, Councillor Jones, Councillor David B. Jala, whom I mentioned earlier, the President, officers, and members of the Association of Female Lawyers of Liberia, IFEL, my esteemed colleagues of the National Executive Council and members of the Liberian National Bar Association, students of the Louis Arthur Graham School of Law, the clergy, the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. By virtue of the authority in me vested by the Constitution of the Liberian National Bar Association, I hereby declare this Assembly 2018 of the Liberian National Bar Association formally open for the transaction of business as may be brought before, and it's hereby so ordered.
In the same vein, we will have the President to perform the adoption of the program agenda for this session.
From the floor for the adoption of the program agenda, which we have in our hands. Joining Councillor Attorney at Law, may so move. Thank you.
I so move, if I can obtain a second, that the program agenda just online be used as our working tools for this assembly.
Is there any second?
It has been moved by Councillor Kiri and seconded by Councillor Lama. The agenda, which we have in our hands, be adopted as a working tool for the conduct of business at this Assembly 2018 of the Liberian National Bar Association. All in favor, make it known by saying yea. Any against? The motion has made and seconded, having been tried and the same having been unanimously agreed upon, it is hereby ordered adopted for the conduct of business at this assembly.
Today, I am overwhelmingly humbled to welcome you to Mosarago County, our county. Our country occupied 737 square miles of 43,000 square miles of the Republic of Liberia. Our country is the smallest county in Liberia. Our country has a population of 1.113 million people, which of course would take 33% of the population of the Republic of Liberia, due to the migrant of people from the rural area. Having listened to our population and the area we occupy in Mosarago County, we say welcome to this program and enjoy yourself. We have food, we have sleeping place. Already, we call as everybody will know.
All privileges observed, all protocols observed. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. LPAC and USAID are delighted to be working with the Bar Association, not only on this event, but also on a pro bono legal aid clinic, which has become so important to the rule of law in Liberia, as well as in the continued legal education program throughout the year. We look forward to participating with you in this really interesting topic, which is somewhat unusual for the Bar Association, because it is truly a mixture of economics, business, investment, but also the role of councillors who are the main advisors to new investors who come into this country, are the main advisors in many cases to the banking system, to the financial sector. Many of you are representatives, are members of the legislature, and play a role in terms of policy formation in this country. So the Bar should be congratulated on picking a complex but interesting and timely topic such as de-dollarization represents. So we'll talk about tomorrow. De-dollarization really is about governance, good governance. It's about corruption, or the lack thereof, and the potential for corruption to lead to an enforced devaluation of the currency, but also to lead to steps that can be taken to stabilize the country and to suppress corruption that is associated with financial transactions. Have an excellent assembly, and we're pleased to be invited to participate with you. Thank you.
Justice Philip A.Z. Banks, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, Councilor Moses Chibega, President of the Bar Association, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I bring you greetings from the Louis Arthur Grant School of Law, which is the alma mater of nearly every one of you. We take pride in that, and that's why the law school continues to be a strong partner of this association. We acknowledge the working relationship, very good working relationship between the president and the entire leadership of the bar and the law school. And we also acknowledge the support of most of you, including a good number of our senior lawyers who are offering pro bono services to teach at the law school, including 3 justices of the Supreme Court, including Justice Banks, who was here, and a number of the former presidents of the Bar Association, and I don't need to name all. In a minute, I'd like to appeal to you to continue to support the law school. We are undertaking a number of activities, including emphasis in research and publication, improving teaching methodology, and engaging with our alumni community. I just had the benefit of seeing a demonstration being done by our IT unit that will support us to enable students and even applicants of the law school, people seeking admission to the law school, to take their exam registration. And we are trying to make sure that we have more local content course books, of which many. All these require funding, and so we'll be coming to you as individual members of the alumni community, as lawyers, as Liberians, who we know share our vision to making sure that the law school remains a leading institution of legal scholarship in the region and in further. Thank you.
All protocols observed. My name is Kevin James, and I am with IGSI. We are an INL U.S. Embassy funded project here in Liberia. I'm here today with my colleagues, Terry Bond and Ray Cole. And together we work with all justice sector actors, prosecutors, judges, and public defenders to advise in the rule of law. We would like to thank you for welcoming us at this convention or conference. And we wish you all a very successful assembly. Thank you. Good day.
Also here is Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Dole, from the Union of Liberian Associations in the Americas. At this time, we call on Mr. Dole, Mr. Weir Dole, for greetings.
Be here this morning. My wife and I are visiting Mrs. Doe, Uwe Doe, the niece of Dr. George Clay here. But I'm very much thrilled to be here this morning and to at least observe this auspicious session of the Bar Association. And on behalf of the President of the Union of Madrid Associations in the Americas, the Honorable Bamba Fofana, I'll bring you greetings, and we will be with you at all times and to observe this session until the end. Thank you so much for gathering here and to seek the best, none the best, but the best, as indeed.
Mr. President, the National Association of Trial Judges President, who was recently re-elected for his second term, would have loved to be here but for some medical concerns. And so he asked me to represent him. He would like to congratulate you and all your corps of officers for the smooth and able manner by which you are steering the National Bar Association. He appreciates the relationship that exists between the National Bar and the trial judges that enables the collaboration at various levels that we see today. He asked me to express his concern for the National Bar's conspicuous absence from the 7th National Conference of the trial judges. He hopes that this is just a matter of inadvertence and not something deeper than that. Mr. President, the topic, investing in the rule of law, a sine qua non for social, political, and economic development and sustainable peace in Liberia, is very relevant to not only the judges, who are a major player in the delivery of this proposition, not only to the judges, but the entire country. Because everything may break down, but when the rule of law still stands, then the nation stands in its entirety. That brings us, Mr. President, to a concern he asked me to flag here. And that concern is the absence of effective pension scheme for judges when they retire. Judges use the best part of their time to serve in the country. But when they retire at the age of 70, what they receive as money to live on is 9,000 to 10,000 Liberian dollars, or someone said 7. He's asked me to say to you that this does not aid the investment in the rule of law that is being made for economic development and sustainable peace. Because when the judge has to get up in the midnight and he thinks on what will happen to him when he leaves, he may want to stay in bed wondering how he will do after he leaves. So once more, we would like to thank you and all your court officers, and everyone, all that are here to partake in this 2018 annual Assembly of the National Bar. God bless.
I bring greetings to you from the Honorable Supreme Court of the Republic of Liberia. Firstly, the Chief Justice would love to have been here, but he too has some death in his family, which required his presence, and so he would not be here, and he asked that we should step into his shoes. I don't want to step into his shoes, but I represent the court. So the Honorable, the Associate Justice, and Justice York is also present here with me. And I speak both for myself and for God on behalf of the court in greeting you on this occasion. The Supreme Court hopes that this will be a successful program, that when you leave from here, there will be fruits for us. That it will not just be that we're coming over and we're discussing topics, and when we leave, we forget about the implementation of them. So we hope that holding a successful assembly, that you will follow through with actions that will reflect the results of the assembly that we have here, that we will be having here today. Let me, before I take my seat, also emphasize that even if the Chief Justice had not asked that I should be present here to speak for the court, I still would have been here. I was saying to the president of the bar, I said, I long to be at all of these occasions. So whether I'm representing the Supreme Court or whether I'm representing myself, I'll be here. For me, this is a delicate moment because in this capacity, it will be the last time that I will be appearing before you. As you know, our Constitution dictates that at the age of 70, we should retire. In June of this year, I will be 70. And consistent with the Constitution, I will be retired. I had said to my colleagues when we opened court the last time that this is going to be the last time I'll be seated as an Associate Justice at the opening of court. Depending on when the court closes, I may or may not be still there when the court is closed. So let me express on this occasion the pleasure that I have had as an Associate Justice, working with the Liberia National Bar Association and with all of the lawyers, members of the bar. Of course, my love for the law will not permit me to retire from the law. So I retire only as an Associate Justice. Let me promise the association that I will continue to remain very, very active. In fact, I guess more active than I am currently in the constrain you from airing out the opinions I have, the principles I stand for, and greater involvement in our society and in the articulation of the law. But as I leave, let me assure you that I will be vocal and I will be active, very active for the body. So let me thank you again for the opportunity that I have to collaborate with you, to be a part of you, and to give you the assurance that I will continue to be a part of you. So for myself, for the Supreme Court, please have a fruitful program. Thank you.
Proceed to constitute the resolution committee. There is a saying in Liberia, don't ride a rolling horse to death. Don't ride a rolling horse to death. But then again, when you work so hard, your performance is from time to time superlative. We cannot help but call on you from time to time. And although it makes for some form of inbreeding, which we must acknowledge, but we can't help it. And so we have one of our colleagues here who so impressed us with the resolution in Bangla in November last, that we thought, by acclamation as a matter of fact, we want to see who Angelique Weeks chairing the resolution committee again today. And so by that, Honorable Weeks, you are the chair of the resolution committee. Members of your committee are as follows: Asatu Bar, current Vice President of the Monserrato County Bar, will be your co-chair. Paul Javan, Councillor Paul Javan, is member of the committee. Honorable Cyril Degedeto is member of the committee. Honorable Councillor Abraham Sila is member of the committee. And Professor Jamal C. Deltro of the Louis Adam Graham School of Law will serve as the advisor. I thank you very much.
It is an honor to have been invited here as your keynote speaker for such an auspicious occasion. At the same time, distinguished guests, distinguished members of the bar, I must tell you that this is the first time in my life, in my professional career, that I literally asked myself, why me? I am not a lawyer, notwithstanding the fact that, as you heard, I completed the first year in law school under some of Liberia's most erudite professors, such as the late Toy Bernard, Tuan Red, current Associate Justice Banks of the Supreme Court, and Sipa Mabande, amongst others. Not being a lawyer, I therefore consulted quite broadly before I accepted this invitation. From amongst my professional colleagues, the legal profession, amongst the Liberian Female Women Lawyers Association, who all encouraged me to accept this invitation, though I kept maintaining, but I'm not a lawyer. But they came back to me and said, but it's okay. They know that you are not a lawyer. It's okay. Let me add, for all of you who may not know me, neither am I a politician. I'm a first-class international development professional, a patriot of the highest order, very action-oriented, with little patience for mediocrity. Little patience for mediocrity. That means the Liberian way, which accepts mediocrity, is a no-no for me. You will therefore hear in my discussion and in some of my recommendations, you will see what I'm saying. This is why I'm situating here at the beginning. And so I find myself addressing this distinguished gathering. In so doing, I have benefited from contributions resulting from consultations as far afield as the World Bank, Liberian lawyers in the diaspora, such as Councillor A.B. Clark, Edward Nouvel, Liberia's former CID Deputy Director, Mr. Charles Ebu King, who, if any of you remember him, was strong on the rule of law, in his profession, and was able to give me some insights on how we have proceeded in the past. I've also benefited from insights from the Canadian pro bono lawyer Jim Dubé, who provided assistance to the Minister of Justice over the years. Also Councillor Seward Cooper, Councillor Musa Chesson, as well as discussions with Her Honor, Judge Eva Mappe, Councillor Bima Lasana, Councillor Joyce Woods, who provided me some insights into the Liberian National Bar Association activities. Lastly, given the subject on which I had been invited to speak, investing in the rule of law, I met with UNMIL for some perspectives on their extraordinary support to government of Liberia under former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Vice President Joseph Iman Bokai's administration in preserving the peace over the past 12 to 15 years, which was underpinned by what was clearly investment in the rule of law that has brought us to where we are today. We have to acknowledge the contribution of the past. We tend in Liberia not to do that. And this is unfortunate, because you've got to build on the past and the achievements of the past, notwithstanding whatever shortcomings. So let me begin by adding my voice to the many over the past weeks or so in expressing our gratitude to UNMIL as the mission terminates its assignment here. Both government and civil society have given its praise, to which we can only add ours, as we have earlier in their support to the work of the Angie Brooks International Center for Women's Empowerment, Leadership Development, International Peace and Security, in our role in the just ended legislative and presidential elections. On behalf of the establishment coordinator, Councillor Yvette Chesson-Brewer, who has been in Sierra Leone providing support with other distinguished women from Liberia and elsewhere on the continent to support the elections through the Women's Situation Room processes. And some of them are here who participated. We have Elizabeth Wanga from Uganda, who is here. And we have our own Liberian female women lawyers who are part of the Women's Situation Room in Sierra Leone. We have two of you here, I think Councillor Pearl Bull and one other, the head of the Women's Lawyers Association. Is she here? Okay. Basically, you had Liberian women joining with other African women, participating and contributing to the electoral process in Sierra Leone, which is undergoing a rough time. Councillor Chesson-Brewer is still there, and her Honor Chinere Hesse from Ghana is there with other women. Now, so on behalf of Councillor and myself, I want to say to UNMIL, thank you, and in our Liberian parlance, thank you plenty, plenty, plenty. For those who may not know, the center is named in honor of Liberia's late permanent representative to the United Nations in the 60s. Angie Brooks, amongst Liberia's foremost legal minds. She chaired the UN Trusteeship Council, oversaw the independence of several African countries in the 60s, but above all, she has the distinction of being the second woman president of the UN General Assembly and first African woman back in the late 60s. In honoring her through the establishment of the center, we are honoring women in Africa and worldwide in leadership. That is what the center is about. And I happen to be the chair. Now, the motto of the center is peace is in our hands. And it is that motto that we have taken all over Africa, coming from Liberia, a country coming out of crisis, for whom peace has been critical and the sustainability. Now, with this background, my approach in this paper will proceed along the following lines. Our work, by the way, has been with facilitation by partners, some of whom are in this room, among whom is LPAC. Are you here? LPAC and others. Foremost, we look at the definition of what we mean by the rule of law. Secondly, we highlight some of what constituted UNMIL's investment in the rule of law in Liberia over the past 12 to 15 years. Thirdly, I then proceed to share with you how those on the outside of your profession sees the legal system, which will provide you elements for self-reflection. And here I will urge you to listen to the critique that may be forthcoming and learn from it, but do not take it personally. Rather, they should serve as the basis for improvement in the interest of greater effectiveness in the implementation and functioning of the rule of law in Liberia. Let me say here that what you will be hearing should not come as a surprise to you, since I recall hearing the president of the association sometime last year on the radio briefing the public on the results of your annual meeting held in Banga, where you were providing a summary of some of the outcomes, including from the address of the Chief Justice. And I found it extremely educational and intellectually challenging, saying we need more of this. Fourthly, I then looked at the Liberian National Bar Association and identified the need for the association to speak out and help to inform Liberians on some of the critical issues facing the nation, on which it has tended to remain silent. There is, as a result, an intellectual vacuum on informed and well-reasoned issues that will prove critical to the future of our nation. We need to hear the voice of the brain trust of our nation, amongst which the Liberian National Bar Association. Every day we are hearing on the radio others speaking on constitutional issues of removal of the Negro Clause, dual citizenship, land reform, amongst others. I will address that and say, where's the voice of the Liberian National Bar Association? We need to hear your voice. Finally, I intend to make some concrete recommendations for investing in the rule of law that will mean some collaborative initiative between the LNBA, the Louis Arthur Brown School of Law, and the Angie Brooks Center. These will be initiatives that are expected to respond to some of the lacuna mentioned in the section on the outsiders' public views of our legal system, and will build on and piggyback on our recent collaboration with the association on the Talking Bus project with the support of USAID LPAC project, and invite the law school to participate in these as part of continuing legal education, the objective of which would be to capacitate the public itself in playing its role as regards the rule of law. Definition of the rule of law. What do we mean by the rule of law? In defining the rule of law, I first begin by extracting from a recent speech, not yet released, by Mrs. Sandy Okoro, Senior Vice President and General Counsel of the World Bank at the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, made on March 22nd this year. The rule of law, she says, is a broad concept It is best characterized by a system whereby there is a basic public understanding of laws and regulations. Second, laws and regulations are applied equally to all. The state is also subject to the rules and laws. Many also, and I'm quoting an extract from her, many also see the rule of law as a way for people to protect their fundamental rights, without which the cycle of poverty and disempowerment will continue. In concrete terms, rule of law can protect against discrimination, provide individuals with a right to a fair trial, and secure their status as being equals under the law. She argues further that the rule of law can establish an important foundation for a country's development. She concludes with her firm belief that legal and governance reform rooted in the rule of law is essential for sustainable development, and specifically for the empowerment of poor people and the betterment of their lives. And again, coming back to our own continent, we may refer to the position in the Abuja Declaration on Law, Justice and Development, adopted in February 2003 by African Chief Justices, Ministers of Justice and Academia, which proclaims that the rule of law, justice, respect for fundamental rights, and development are inextricably linked. Or again, from the introduction to the African Development Bank Law for Development Review, Volume 1, the editor-in-chief, none other than our own Liberian Counselor at Law, Councillor Seward Cooper, which stated the following: for us, the nexus between law and development is clear. In the absence of the rule of law, chaos exists. The lack of adequate justice breeds injustice, while injustice foments discontent. Discontent foments revolt, and the product of revolt is unpredictable. Development does not occur in chaotic or unpredictable setting, but thrives in secure, predictable environments. Hence the investment in the rule of law being the sine qua non for sustainable peace and development. The above reflects a number of essential elements constituting the rule of law. A set of rules generally agree. These rules, according to Councillor Cooper, must be broadly distributed to all within the body politic, such that the people will have notice of the rules, and the rules must then be fairly and equally applied to all persons. With such a perspective and understanding, can anyone have doubts that the rule of law is an essential condition, a thing that is absolutely necessary, which is what the definition of sine qua non for socio-political and economic development and sustainable peace in Mama Liberia? Post-conflict society, whose basic fundamental institutions, morals, and systems have been thoroughly destroyed over more than 25 plus years, and where the horrendous task of rebuilding and reconstruction by the former government of President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Vice President Yema Boakai over the past 12 years, with the support of UNMIL and the rest of the international community, as indicated above, and all, of course, and above all, the resilient Liberian people. Sometimes you wonder where we come from. You can't quite believe we are still here, and we did it. But we did it. We did it. And many times I tell you, and I'm sure many of you can't believe it, because many times myself I want to cry and give up. But you know what? We can't give up, because we have to build on the sacrifices of the past. As per one of the major rabbis, he has said, you're not expected to finish the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. We cannot abandon the work, because if we abandon the work, this means we're putting a slap in the face of all of those who work hard to preserve this nation and bring us to where we are. Now, highlights of UNMIL's investment in the rule of law during its service. Within its rule of law pillar, what did UNMIL do? It provided support to Liberia in the areas of justice, human rights, police, security sector, and correction services. It is also my understanding that efforts of UNMIL's rule of law pillar during the transition period that is underway with UNMIL's effective departure has focused in its areas of responsibility to ensure that support to the priority areas continue beyond his departure. I'd like to highlight two dimensions in particular, relevant to the Bar Association what we're about. The pillar initiated the need for a continued presence of human rights support to Liberia, resulting in the UN Resident Coordinator, among its transition initiatives, having already formalized the establishment of the Office of Human Rights in Liberia and has sourced funding. Secondly, the pillar also initiated, and this is very exciting, a capacity building project for the Senate and the legislature on the oversight functions, particularly the Justice and Security Subcommittees through the International Security Sector Advisory Team. I understand further that a scoping mission was included during 2017, which UNDP's Rule of Law Joint Program agreed to continue with the said initiative after the departure. Why is this important? I'm stressing this because perhaps the association, the Bar Association, may consider and look for opportunities for association with this particular initiative and effort to strengthen these legislative functions. Association, you may want to look at prospects for association with this initiative of the UNDP because it could be an inroad to the Bar Association being able to impact those bills that are coming out of the legislature. Those bills that are being formulated by the legislature could benefit from what you all are about as part of this process. Do not knock this. This is an entry point. I'm pointing out to you how you can impact and be a part of helping the legislature to put together some important regulations. Lastly, the rule of law has already published by the end of February lessons learned by all of the components of the pillar. This is in a series of briefing packages. Please take a look at it. Look at it, read it, and you will find entry points for the Bar Association with what the UN, what UNGAL is leaving behind for continuation in terms of building on. And this will basically give an opportunity for the Bar Association to be a part and parcel and help to import into some of what is coming up. Now, I would like to now provide a rather interesting illustration of yet another dimension of investment in the rule of law in Liberia from the past that demonstrates how such investment can enhance the operationalization of the rule of law in a very practical sense. This concerns an innovation from the then former Deputy Director of Police for CID Affairs on or about the late 70s under the administration of Charles Ebu King. In his own words, the then Deputy Director would hold every Saturday an initiative called Coffee with the Deputy Director of Police for CID Affairs and would invite individual judges and lawyers from the judiciary to speak to his officers at the CID about the rule of law and need for police to operate within these laws. This was part of the reform he introduced and that brought the staff into contact with another important aspect of the legal system. The first person there, gracious to accept, was Judge Emma Shannon Walser. What am I talking about? You had a judge having an opportunity to interact with the officers of the CID and discussing, and they were in turn learning about the essential issues of what they, the CID officers, were about and the limits of their role and the rest of the system. This is part of what you call investing in the rule of law, being able to basically help evolve new perspectives and so on. This example illustrates the important role that training, continuing legal education can and must play in capacitating those in charge with administering the rule of law, if the rule of law is to be more than just remaining on the books. Now, the third area I said I would talk about is how do the public see the judiciary, the legals, the laws, and all of that. This is important because you need to know you need to know and understand how people out there feel and look at you. Because action and correction must be taken. Otherwise, that definition I gave earlier about the rule of law means nothing. Here, we are benefiting from inputs from Councillor A.B. Clark, amongst others. Here, we want to highlight the views of the public. I referred to the Abuja Declaration on Law earlier. In looking at the perception of how outsiders view the legal system, one must ask about the reality in our Liberian society today. As regards A, timely adjudication of cases, B, use of the court's overcrowded dockets to prolong cases, corruption with the judicial sector, extent to which lawyers holding themselves up to higher standards and demanding the best, not settling for mediocrity and excusing ourselves as the Liberian way. The Liberian way is destroying our society. The Liberian way is destroying our society. We must not settle for second best. As long as we settle for second best, we are going nowhere. We are going nowhere and we will go nowhere. We talk and refer to Mauritius. We refer to Singapore. You know what Lee Kuan Yew said? Lee Kuan Yew said that the reason and how Singapore got to be where it was, he had to train and change the mindset of his people from third world to thinking first world. It's not as simple. Singapore is a small country, Mauritius is a small country, Liberia. No, you've got to change what and how we see things. Okay? We talk, but we've got to do. We've got to do. Ma Jaluma, the mother of the former president of the University of Liberia, May Antoinette Grimes Sherman, what did she say? She said, Dr. Talk is all right, but Dr. Do is the man. Dr. Talk is all right, but Dr. Do is the man. This is Ma Jaluma, mother of Mary Antoinette Grimes Sherman. Okay? Now, also we should highlight some of these, the outsiders' perception. What are some of the other ones? You have the pro bono volunteer Canadian lawyer, Jim Dubé, assigned to the Ministry of Justice under the International Senior Law Project over the period April to May 2007. In his article, Restructuring the Rule of Law in Liberia, the Main Law Review, Volume 6, 60, number 2, 208, of the University of Maine Law School, he says in that article that there can be no rule of law, listen to this, there can be no rule of law without the commitment of those who administer those rules on behalf of the post-conflict state that has endured some 14 years of crisis. He argues that existing legal architecture and institutions in a post-conflict state may in fact matter less to the effectiveness of operation of the rule of law than does the character of the people who run the legal system. Are we hearing what he's saying? As such, he concludes that if the judges and lawyers who operate the legal system are not genuinely committed to the rules of law, then no new laws to address perceived problems will serve very little use. Next, there is the urgent need for consolidation of the dual legal system of customary and statutory law that operates here. We are not the only country. Might Liberia, in fact, benefit from lessons of how our sister African countries are managing this? Might our position and participation at the ECOWAS Court afford us an opportunity to tap into how such a problematic is being addressed? Yet another issue that those outside are looking at, the extraordinary backlog of cases. Liberia is not the only country experiencing this. When are we going to take concrete action, instead of just saying the backlog, for God's sake, let's do something about it. To remedy instead of simply complaining and stating this reality. Why do we not take meaningful steps to institute to institute alternative dispute resolution ADR mechanism modality as an integral part of our legal system, as is the case in our neighboring countries, Ghana, Nigeria. Now, I'm aware that elements of mediation aspect does indeed operate in that commercial-like cases, like the mediation. But I am talking about a serious need, honorable lawyers, of our legal system to incorporate ADR into it. I believe it will positively impact the extraordinary challenges of the backlog of case loads. Right? Introduce ADR meaningfully. Let it be part and parcel of approaches to solve our problem. Yet again, the long delay of handing down of decisions, notwithstanding cases attended to by the court system. At the Supreme Court level, decisions, opinions in cases heard some 2 or 3 years ago, oftentimes have yet to be handed down. I am not talking about the recent situation of where we had the legislative elections and all of that, that naturally and understandably had to put certain things aside. I'm not talking about that. That is understood. I'm not referring to that. Those delays are clear. But that was a result of special circumstances. Complaints of these are real and serious, and something needs to be done. People on the outside are saying no. And I can tell you that I have had personal experience with this. My family are certain, and my own and my personal experience of this, which is really, I can't understand it. The famous Abijadi versus Richards family case, heard some 3 years ago, and for which Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice in Chamber, ruled in our favor. Until today, I can't hear about it, and come on. This is for someone like me with access. What about those who do not have access? What about those who do not have access? I have access at the highest level. I have met several times with the Chief Justice. I have met with Madam President. 3, 4 years, no action? As I said, it's not only that issue. What about those who do not have access? They will take 10 years? What is happening? Honorable Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, you know what I'm talking about. And Honorable Associate Justice, I know you were Justice in Chamber, had to recluse yourself, but come on. Associate Justice of the Supreme Court rules on an issue, and it takes 3, 4 years to attend. Why? Then one has other instances where there are deficiencies at the level of one's own lawyers, which are tantamount to malfeasance, a lack of adequate attention to their client's interests, leaving the clients feeling helpless and at their whim with no recourse. So the public, the client, needs to know if there are any legal remedies or mechanism to protect their interests. Here again, I have been personally victimized in a case that went to the Supreme Court, excellently attended by the Supreme Court by my lawyers. 1 whole year since it was attended, I can't even see or hear from my lawyers. What recourse does the client have when your lawyer is acting like I don't know what? No, we need to know. We need to know. These are some of the lapses and lacunae that people feel. Okay? Supreme Court attended a case excellently. My lawyer have not seen him or them since May 11 when it was attended. Come on, is there any recourse that the client has against the lawyers when the lawyers don't perform? We need to know. Yes, but we don't know. This is where, if the Liberian Bar Association, you are here in my next area, could help with legal education discussions so the public can know. The public needs to know what to do, where to go. We need advice. Okay? These are just a few of what 1 year is in the street. It is necessary for the profession to listen and take some concrete action. and provide remedies in the interest of society. Here again, recall the earlier rendition of the elements, components of the rule of law. Possible solutions, read the backlog. Here is some concrete proposal. LPAC, read the backlog. Can we not see how to draw upon Liberian legal expertise in the diaspora? Could one not, through the USAID LPAC and the follow-up to all that UNMIL has done in the area of rule of law, develop a program along the lines of the top 10? Top 10 is the UNDP use of expatriate nationals in the country, use of expatriate nationals expertise of the UNDP that would make available such Liberian legal expertise overseas to be available, to come here and work with you on a certain limited period to assist with the backlog. This is how you make the link between development and the rule of law. And it is possible. LPAC, let's look into it. Together with the Liberian Bar Association and the UNDP and the resident coordinator. Certainly, if we were to operationalize seriously ADR mechanism, again, one could have a volunteer corps of Liberian lawyers, such as the US-Canadian Senior Executive Service Corps. Utilize our expertise. Fourthly, this brings me now to the fourth dimension that I mentioned I would like to tackle, that concerns certain critical issues in the nation that one needs to hear the voice of the people in the black gown. The voice of the National Bar Association on issues on which the bar has been silent as regards helping to inform and educate. Listen to what I'm saying. Inform and educate the public in order for them, for us, to be properly informed, to make decisions based on facts, on knowledge, and not a lot of hearsay and a lot of talk. What do I have in mind? There are critical and timely issues that everyone but the Liberian National Bar Association is being heard talking about. Issues that will impact the future of our nation, such as the citizenship issue and the Negro Clause removal, as well as the Land Rights Bill and land reform. One is looking for informed guidance from one of what constitutes an important pillar of our society, of the Brain Trust of Mama Liberia. All of you are part of the Brain Trust. You cannot sit here and not say anything. You cannot not help us. We need to be helped. Everybody is talking about issues they don't know about, and the uneducated and uninformed are being influenced. We need to be influenced by you all. That is your role. And if you don't do it, you are reneging on your responsibility. You are reneging on your responsibility. One is looking for informed guidance. Mama Liberia, what are the pros and cons? We need some informed guidance to assist the public better understand the imperatives involved. For example, the Land Rights Bill. I recently learned that there is a clause in it to reduce the period of adverse possession on land ownership from 20 years, which exists right now, which I learned in law school, to 7 years. In whose interest? No, inform, we need to be informed. You need to educate and help us to understand. How is this possible? Based on whose interest? When we all know that the people have had to flee the nation to preserve their life, and so they've been out of the country. They want to come back to the country, so you want to say, oh no, I'm sorry, yeah? And no, it's not good enough. This is not acceptable, and the public needs to understand. Liberian National Bar Association, you cannot be silent. Yet another issue concerning the citizenship issue and the removal of the Negro Clause. Why are these two issues combined in one bill? They should not be in the same bill. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that the Negro Clause is a constitutional issue. The Negro Clause is a constitutional issue. The issue of Liberians born out, and continue, it's not constitutional. I'm not a lawyer, but come on. You all know it. Tell us, let us hear from you. We need to be educated. We need to be properly informed. The issue of citizenship and children of Liberian born overseas should not be, it's not a constitutional issue. should not be in the same bill. You need to break that bill down. You are confusing people. You are confusing people. The legislature, come on. You have to inform people so people can know. Moreover, this issue of removal of the Negro clause, in the interest of development, it has to be looked at carefully. Why the rush? Liberians are disempowered in our own country. The removal of the clause must be done with sufficient protection of the interests of our people. Now, I know our people, I know you're talking against President Weir. Y'all listen carefully. I said it must be done with sufficient protection of the interests of our people, and sufficient time must be allowed to study it and our various issues and to be considered. We need guidance. The Liberian needs to speak out. The president needs to be properly advised and provided sufficient information on the dimension of the issue. You lawyers, Liberian National Bar Association, don't just sit here and talk quietly. We need to advise our leaders. For example, I will tell you, I have severe reservation about the implementation of treasury change. However, at this point in time, y'all listen to me properly. When y'all put it in the papers, I said at this point in time, I think it is premature. I think we need considered time to look at it, to look at the various dimensions, and our president needs to be properly advised. We must have sufficient considerations of the various dimensions. I'm not saying that I want the Bar Association to say one or the other. I'm not saying that. I am saying that the Bar Association needs to help us, the public, on the arguments. Let us not rush, and above all, let us separate the issues in the bill. Negro clause, one different, you take it out. You know it's not correct. You all know it's not correct.
We know.
So what are we scared of?
Scared of talk.
You can't be scared to talk. That time is behind us. No, it's not good enough. It is not good enough. People have died. Now, proposals for collaboration between the Bar Association and ABIC. I propose that as we have collaborated recently on the talking bus as part of the electoral process, for which we are most grateful, we worked together with the Bar Association, and we went on what we call a talking bus of Angie Brooks. We went throughout the country to explain to the people in layman's language what the decision of the Supreme Court was, what it meant. Extraordinary. Please give a hand to LPAC for supporting that. I'm proposing that perhaps might we consider a weekly hour radio show in standard English and subsequently translated into various dialects with the Bar Association and Angie Brooks, such that the public is receiving well-reasoned pros and cons and appreciation of some of these issues that will impact our nation. In other words, we did the talking bus for that. Why don't we do a weekly radio show on some of these issues that people can be informed of, upholding the rule of law? The imperatives of sustaining this. Also in concert with the law school and the Liberian National Bar Association, might consideration be given, Dean, to a certificate course in essentials of the law for the general public. I recall 2 years ago when I launched my book at the school, I mentioned this. Let's do something about it. Let's not just talk and leave things sitting down. Let's start collaborating. All of this is what you're calling proposing continuous investment in the rule of law. There's continuing legal education, not limited to lawyers, but to people like me. I need some education. Not so? As a result, we'll have an informed and better educated public to know how to vote, to apply the rights. Right now, the public is not informed, is not educated. By so doing, the Liberian National Bar Association will essentially be participating. Through such an approach, the legal profession will essentially be investing in building confidence in yourselves, so that the feeling out there about you all will disappear, will improve. This is how you build confidence in the legal system. This responds to some of what I said earlier. Intellectual debates are necessary. The public needs education on adequate land reform, adequate criminal law, use of the penal law versus civil. As I draw to a close, I would like to commend the Dean of the Law School for the relaunch of the Law School Journal late last year. That is the intellectual thing that has been missing. My compliments. I think the National Bar Association, you all also need to have a law review. Major contribution to the vacuum in intellectual debate. In that regard, may I also suggest, listen, President Trump is talking about the tariffs. Who is looking at what the implications will be on Liberia? We need to be looking at it seriously right now. What will be the implications of Trump tariffs on Liberia? Your commercial law, the law school, Bar Association, you need to do something. Back in 2009, as a member of cabinet, I proposed that we start looking at all the implications of when the TPS disappears. We've got 1 more year extension. Let us start looking at what we're going to do about it. You must be part of it. Problems, difficulties Liberian lawyers in the diaspora may have experienced. They're having trouble getting accredited. Why? Something must be done. Something must be done. Closing remarks, I want to take you all back to the case of the late former Minister of Justice, Jenkins Scott, ipso facto dean of the bar. He died broke. And when he had nowhere else to go, where did he go? He went to the Temple of Justice in November 2010. He turned to the courts. He said, this is my home, and that's why I'm here. What am I saying? He may have been ill and disheveled, but when he was in trouble and in need of assistance, he went to the courts and called it my house. And that is what everyone does. We go to the courts when we are in need. As such, the issue at bay is how can lawyers or judicial actors enhance the administering of justice. I have tried to provide some pointers and guidance through continuous investment in the rule of law, the sine qua non for sustainable peace and development. Indeed, for upholding the Lone Star, Mama Liberia. Here I would like you to bear with me as I read an extract from Dr. Romeo Horden, year 2000 oration for July 26th. Our Lone Star at the year 2000. From 1847 to 1999, our Lone Star, the Republic of Liberia, has remained afloat, sometimes at full staff. On occasions, the storms of nationhood have been the staff to break, have bent the staff to the breaking point, but never broken, never tossed to the ground. We have had our birth and growing pains, our Camelot days, and recently our nightmare. But the Lone Star still flies over land and over sea. You have a role, significant role, to play in upholding the Lone Star. From the day our Lone Star first hoisted, most of the time, it stood alone and lonely. May I ask you to stand and raise your voices and join me in singing the refrain of the Lone Star forever. Lone Star forever, the Lone Star forever, oh Lord, may it float over land, over sea, deciding forever, uphold it forever, oh shout for the Lone Star forever.
As I sat in my sanctified seat, as we, the Pentecostal, like to refer to seats we sit in, and listening to the keynote address, I got increasingly terrified. it is normally customary that when you listen to such an inspiring elucidation from a very esteemed and distinguished personality, when you are the next speaker, you start to develop some butterflies in your stomach and your feet become watery. But I will try to emulate just 10% of her vim and vigor, but also cognizant of the fact that this is lunchtime. And so, Mr. President of the Bar, distinguished legal luminaries, permit me to first and foremost congratulate you and members of the Liberia National Bar Association for the hosting of your 2018 Assembly under the theme, Investing in the Rule of Law is sine qua non for social, political, economic development and sustainable peace in Liberia. The theme of this assembly could not have come at a better time than now, when our nation has just transitioned from one democratically elected government to another. The significance of this history-making transition rests on the fact that this was the first time in 73 years for such constitutional transfer of power in our dear country. During these years, our country witnessed major challenges in our national governance processes, including the rule of law. We need not belabor the fact that the country has witnessed some very serious and tragic occurrences in our national history, which one cannot be proud of as a Liberian, especially counting the events of our 14-year civil war. However, the consolidation of the rule of law and the steady progress over the last 12 years, culminating into the recent orderly, although a little bumpy transfer of political authority, gives everyone a reason for hope for a new dawn in relation to our common patronage. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, your assembly is being held at a time when the new administration is striving to craft national policies which it hopes will improve the livelihood of our people under its pro-poor agenda, the new boss phrase in town. The National Bar Association now must position itself to provide strategic advisory services to the government of Liberia, especially in the areas of reviewing draft legislations, reviewing concessions, treaties, conventions, and other legal instruments for the betterment of our society. I'm happy that the keynote speaker gave a lot of reference to the point just made. Mr. President of the Bar and distinguished members of the Bar, you have asked me to share my perspective on the topic, economic and financial impact of de-dollarization. And let me say, standing on existing protocols, that my perspectives and opinions are my honest reflection and assessment as a professional banker with regards to the situation, and in no way intended to defame, besmear, or impeach the professionalism of anyone, let alone the government. In order to adequately address this theme, I would like to consider some key contextual issues in order to set the basis for our discussion on the topic under consideration. What are some of the contextual issues? One, what factors and circumstances necessitate dollarization? What is de-dollarization? What are the elements of de-dollarization? How can the recent Liberian scenario of de-dollarization be best classified? What are the potential economic and financial impact of the Liberian scenario of de-dollarization, including some legal conundrums? What factors and circumstances necessitate dollarization? Distinguished legal luminaries of de-dollarization, let me briefly discuss dollarization as a precursor of my perspective on de-dollarization. Since the end of the Bretton Woods system of fixed exchange rate over the last 40 years, the old dilemma facing countries of finding a workable currency exchange arrangement has been more challenging and the choices have been more varied. The decision about which exchange rate system to adapt has become even more difficult as world trade and capital markets move towards integration. New problems have emerged along the way, and with them, new answers to one, the question of the best exchange rate regime to adapt, and two, the most convenient currency to hold sovereign reserves in order to mitigate currency risk and promote a country's development goals. The newest of those solutions at the time was dollarization. Under this concept, a country officially abandons its own currency and adopts a more stable currency, and in most cases, the US dollars as a legal tender. A country may also elect to conduct a portion of its domestic economic activities in the adapted foreign currency, or in our case, US dollars, under a liberal or floating exchange rate regime. Dollarization can best be termed in our context as limited dollarization, however, due to the fact that some countries may adapt to pursue full dollarization, especially if monetary policy tools prove to be inadequate in the management of domestic and local currency considerations. Others may yet even adopt a posture of re-dollarization, as we witnessed in Mexico, Bolivia, and quite recently, Zimbabwe, being cases of note. Full dollarization would imply taking steps from informal limited dollarization to the full official use of the foreign designated currency, and most likely US dollars, for all transactions. Liberia was a classic case during the Tubman era of governance in our country. The main economic attraction for dollarization is the elimination of the risk of a sudden sharp devaluation in the country's exchange rate. This may allow the country to reduce the risk premium attached to its international borrowing, and dollarized economies normally tend to enjoy a higher level of confidence from international investors. Lower interest rate spreads on international borrowing, reduced fiscal costs, and more catalytic incentives for investment and growth if properly managed and properly sequenced. What is not arguable about dollarization is the key factor influencing this option for adoption by a sovereign state as being one, the terms of trade, and two, the role exports play in facilitating foreign exchange generation. Now, what is de-dollarization? De-dollarization is when a country, officially or unofficially sometimes, moves away either partially or completely from the use of the presumably more stable foreign currency, the US dollars, to its local currency as a more preferred medium of exchange for the conduct of fiscal and monetary policy activities. De-dollarization is usually adopted when the country faces a number of monetary policy challenges owing to the following. One, impact of loss of value on account of reserve balances if the US dollar is projected to fall against other competitive world currencies. Two, concerns for capital and foreign exchange flight. Three, the export projections and GDP numbers, if they indicate a clear potential that the local currency will appreciate over the medium and long term. Four, the boosting of domestic productivity through quantitative easing, spurring of investments, and effecting a cheaper mode of public expenditures. And lastly, political considerations. There are largely two types of de-dollarization. They are transactional de-dollarization and financial de-dollarization. Transactional de-dollarization focuses on the US dollar as a medium of exchange for the conduct of public sector and private sector activities. Financial de-dollarization, on the other hand, focuses on the US dollars as a reporting currency, or in some instances, a contracting currency, or quite simply, a currency for accounting and reporting and legal disclosures. The mode of implementation of de-dollarization also can be categorized into two forms. phase-based or sequence de-dollarization, and forced de-dollarization. Phase-based de-dollarization is usually characterized by a clear strategic roadmap with key trackers and targets. Key amongst them are the following. 1. Measures to manage wage and price flexibility and their attendant effects. 2. Measures to reduce negative balance of payments. 3. The creation of an interbank market to easily access liquidity in the banking industry. 4. Measures to keep inflation within tolerable limits. And lastly, gradual increase in foreign exchange surrender. Now, those are usually the 5 components of phase-based de-dollarization. Liberia realized that at some point in our economic sojourn, we will have to confront the issue of de-dollarization. Therefore, under the agenda for transformation, the Central Bank of Liberia laid the foundation for moving towards a phase-based de-dollarization, but taking a longer period in terms of outlook. Forced de-dollarization, on the other hand, is when a nation elects on the basis of political considerations with no serious appreciation of economic implications to abruptly effect transactional and financial de-dollarization. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, legal luminaries, in March of 2017, barely a year ago, the government of Liberia introduced forced de-dollarization through an act of the 52nd National Legislature to amend Part 5, Section 19, Subsection 1 and 2 of the Act creating the Central Bank of Liberia in March of 1999. The amendment sought to declare the Liberian dollar as the sole currency of Liberia and legal tender. The legislature, by the passage of this act, was directing that prices for all transactions in Liberia shall be solely indicated in Liberian dollars and cents, and the Liberian dollar shall be the sole currency for accounting, financial reporting, and other official purposes and disclosures in Liberia. At the same time, the act sought to maintain the US dollars as legal tender for the sole discharge of foreign public and private obligations. There's some inconsistencies right there. Let's look a little bit at the legal framework characterizing this act. In our opinion, and I mean the Liberia Bankers Association, the intent of the act to retain the US dollars as a legal tender and restrict its usage to settlement only of foreign obligations as legislated is legally ambiguous. The Liberia Bankers Association and the Central Bank of Liberia made clear their grave concerns regarding the forced rather than phased implementation of de-dollarization as highlighted in this act. The ambiguity is evidenced by the fact that the act did not identify a clear methodology for what is meant by foreign obligations for the purpose of transparency. Did they mean foreign public or foreign private obligations, foreign intents of designated liabilities and obligations outside our shores, foreign intents of foreign investors in our country who may have obligations that may also be characterized as foreign? There was clearly some degree of ambiguity, especially as it relates to the utilization of the two legal tenders. Distinguished legal luminaries, we are convinced that this act was not the product of enough consultation between the national legislature and the economic stakeholders, especially the experts. The national legislature probably did not take note of the eventual economic cost of forced de-dollarization on the Liberian economy with the eventual passage of this act. A whole host of new issues surfaced, especially in the last quarter of 2017, ranging from increased drawdowns out of uncertainties. Yes, we all knew we had an election in the last quarter, but juxtapose the last quarter election with 2011, when we also had elections. We experienced some very unusual trends and developments never seen in the banking sector. At least in my 20 years I've been in it. And that was the first litmus test with regards to the operationalization of this new act. Because with the passage of the national budget, the government had to then act in accordance with this new act on the basis of the new regime in the context of de-dollarization. And it was forced de-dollarization. A whole host of new issues surfaced, like we said, and we'd like to name some of them in the last quarter of 2017. Increased drawdown out of uncertainties, sudden unavailability of sufficient local liquidity. There were times people went to banks, and the banks had to tell you to wait longer in order to get your Liberian dollar. It happened. We are not proud about that, but it happened. Longer queues in the banks, increase in capital flight, holding of Liberian dollars for speculative purposes by traders. The Liberia Bankers Association had worked with the central bank in the development of a roadmap to guide the de-dollarization process as far back as 2012. As we all may be aware, Liberia is a low-income country that relies heavily on foreign assistance, low domestic revenue generation, remittances from the diaspora, and a country with principal exports being iron ore and rubber, and quite recently, oil palm and gold and cocoa emerging as new export opportunities. The government has attempted to revive the timber extraction sector and encourage a little bit of oil exploration. Please hang on with me. According to Index Monday, our GDP gross real growth was estimated at 2.6% in 2017 as compared to negative 1.6% in 2016 and 0 in 2015. Our gross national savings for 2017 was negative 2.3 as compared to negative 21.9 in 2016. GDP consumption per sector estimates for 2017 were as follows: agriculture 36.1%, industrial 10.5%, the service sector 53.4%, and inflation was tagged at 12.8% as compared to 8.8% in 2016. Export was estimated at 202 million in 2017, up from 169.8 million in 2016, and to the contrast, imports were estimated at 1.24 billion in 2017 as opposed to 1.21 billion in 2016. Why am I reading you and boring you with all of these statistics? This picture does not support de-dollarization, at least in the context in which it is being implemented. We will have to do a lot more work to improve this picture, and by improving this picture, we can then ensure that the incidence, and we mean the burden, of de-dollarization doesn't end up being the average Joe Blow on Broad Street. It's very important. Monetary policy continues to be constrained by high dollarization. Yes, that is true, with an estimate of over 60% of broad money supply being in US dollars. As of October 2017, the Liberian dollar has depreciated by 21%, and the pace of depreciation has steadily increased over the last 3 years. In order to revitalize our economy and change this picture, the challenge remains the actualization of policies aimed at 1, economic diversification, 2, increasing investments and improving trade, balance of trade, 3, sustaining foreign direct investment, 4, not undermining diaspora remittances, 5, the development of infrastructure and institutions surrounding them, 6, combating corruption, and 7, political stability and security, hence focus on the rule of law. This picture is not supported, again, by forced de-dollarization. Ladies and gentlemen, this picture, as just highlighted, indicates our over-reliance on imports, as a consequence of which our economy has been dollarized over the years. The statistics on the economy are intended to give a clear picture as to why forced de-dollarization is a misstep, at least for now. And we should retrace our steps back to phase-based de-dollarization. Liberia is a cash-based economy with 2, in essence, legal tenders: the Liberian dollar and the US dollar. However, the level of dollarization in Liberia is very high and has increased steadily. This can generally be ascribed to the desire by residents who have tried to diversify and protect their assets from the risks of perceived depreciation of the Liberian dollars and the eventual economic instability as a result of the 14-year civil war, which is true. The motive for increased dollarization of the economy, particularly during and after the war years, are twofold. One, currency substitution, and two, asset substitution. For currency substitution, the United States dollar is demanded in order to be used essentially as a more stable means of payment and a unit of account by residents who perceive that the holding of the Liberian dollars will leave them at the risk of high inflation and loss of value in the context of the carrying cost and valuation of domestic currency. For asset substitution, there are those who have tried over the years to take precautionary measures against macroeconomic risks such as price instability and the prolonged near dormancy of the productive sector in the economy. The main challenge in this case, the latter, has been the actual measurement of the degree of dollarization. Let's talk a little bit more about the economic and financial impact of forced dollarization on the Liberian economy. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Liberian economy is basically import-oriented, as we have highlighted. Forced dollarization will further exacerbate our liquidity crisis. There is no guarantee we will be able to handle the exchange rate risk, which will be the first impact with regards to forced dollarization, as we have seen over the last 6 months. Most forced dollarization programs initiated by countries globally have ended up with bad economic experiences and a virtual re-dollarization. We are all aware of the experiences of Mexico and Bolivia, which had the outcome of forced dollarization and retracing themselves back to re-dollarization. In the money markets, banks rely on deposits and loan interest rates for domestic and foreign currency to survive and to expand their market shares. Additionally, anticipated forced dollarization will affect and impact the Liberian economy in the following ways. One, the existing foreign correspondent banking relationship saga will worsen between banks in Liberia and banks overseas, because the banks in Liberia will not be able to maintain the foreign currency floats that are part of their correspondent banking relationship. So a bank, like City Bank, New York, for example, may choose to say, well, you just a small fry in terms of my business in Africa, why should I keep carrying the risks perceived with operating in Liberia? Close your account. We experienced that situation in 2013, and at least 4 banks in Liberia lost correspondent banking relationships. De-dollarization in this form and manner will bring that horror story back to the fray. 2, banks will not be able to pay depositors in the event of run on the banks for huge Liberian deposits, owing to the apprehension that US dollar deposits may be nationalized. If we are not careful and we are not circumspect in handling this matter, we could gather one morning and all the banks will be closed because of the run on the banks. I am not trying to be a doomsday prophet here. I'm just looking at what I see and highlighting it bluntly. Credit dollarization will be affected significantly, thus impacting the bank's balance sheet adversely and creating more non-performing loans. How many of us who have US dollar loans with banks and with other non-bank financial institutions who gathered one morning and saw 80% of your salary redenominated in Liberian dollars and put you at the mercy of the foreign exchange rates in order to pay your loans at the banks? It happens. So the experience was the people who come, the borrowers who come take your Liberian and say, well, Mr. CEO, here is it. Take it or leave it. I'm just, a taker of policy decisions. And so the banks have loans that are not adequately serviced, and even where they are serviced, most of the time the foreign exchange rates is passed to the borrower. We do not think that that is fair. Some major concession agreements will be impacted, especially those with the US dollars as the contracting currency. We are aware that As part of some concession agreements, it is in black and white that the US dollar is the currency for operationalizing this agreement. When you tell them that, well, operate in Liberian dollars, in essence, you are telling them to partially contradict what they signed. And so it is important that the proper framework is given in order to operationalize any aspect of de-dollarization. 5, balance of payment deficit will increase. And the reason the balance of payment deficit will increase is because investors in Liberia will start to look for alternative ways to repatriate their capital and probably wind down the risk associated with the running of their investments in Liberia. So we will start to see impacts in terms of gross domestic productivity and exports, and that is worrisome. 6, the current pressure on the exchange rate will worsen, leading to further undermining of the central bank's ability to manage the exchange rate volatility. Distinguished members of the Liberia National Bar Association, we say and point out these observations not because we want to terrify and scare you. We say them because they are the reality of the day. We appreciate the fact that the government has taken some measures to scale back the impact of what we perceive as forced de-dollarization, which was effected in the third quarter of last year. We appreciate that. We've seen some actions on the part of the fiscal side of government to deal with the sudden impact on the economy. We'd like to see more. However, the fact that a legislation is on the docket as a new law governing dollarization requires a whole new dialogue between all stakeholders. Let's not wait until it comes to impact you personally before you speak up. Let's look at it holistically, let's dialogue, and let's find ways to get our de-dollarization program back on track. I will be the first to admit that every single fiscal expert that I've spoken to in this country note and appreciate the fact that at some point we will not continue to use the US dollar as a legal currency in this country. However, now is not the time. Now is certainly not the time. We will have to build the real sector, reduce imports, expand exports, create a more conducive environment for investment, work around the clock to increase wages, expand the private sector, and let the private sector be the engine of growth. Let's do it. Let's not talk it. And let's ensure that when the factors and conditions that necessitate the transitioning to either partial, limited, or complete de-dollarization, when those factors are evident, we will take the bold steps. The Central Bank and the Liberia Bankers Association has embarked on a very ambitious financial sector development implementation plan. It is part and parcel of taking the ginger steps to ensure that we deal adequately with de-dollarization, but let's build the foundation. Today, the deepening of mobile money as a medium of business, the increase of ATMs by banks, discussions with telcos in terms of digitization of currencies as a medium of exchange are all steps being taken by the monetary sector to ensure that when we reach that critical milestone along the road, we'll take the decision and no one gets significantly impacted in an adverse manner. Let's stay the course. Let's not take knee-jerk actions only because we want to throw some red meat to our constituents in terms of political advantage. Let our de-dollarization program be on the basis of empirical and sound financial and economic thinking. That is my humble plea. And by extension, that is the plea of the banking industry of this country. No one opposes de-dollarization. But what no one also will be willing to accept is forced de-dollarization. Currently, as a result of the fiscal sector inability to supply the required amount of foreign exchange to the central bank for foreign exchange transactions in the market, the central bank was constrained to implement the 25% diaspora remittance surrender. How do you move from 84 million foreign exchange that you get from government to 3 million? That was the gap the central bank had to fill. And had the central bank not done that, as painstaking as it is to the ordinary man, the exchange rate probably today would be 200. So we stand with the central bank because we empathize and understand the challenges the central bank has to deal with in serving as that anchor for stabilizing monetary policy. On that note, I'd like to express my thanks and appreciation again to the Bar Association and its leadership for according me the opportunity to speak to you on this very interesting and sensitive topic, the economic and financial implications of de-dollarization. Thank you very much.
Including every now and then you see us leading local and I want to say openly that we're disappointed at the attendance. When we have these meetings, these assemblies, and conferences, even in far away venues like Banga, Ganja, the attendance has been much more than this, far in excess of this. So yes, speaking for the poor, we're disappointed. And we attempted to take to our colleagues some recommendation that hopefully will be beneficial to the bar as a body. So when we take it upon ourselves as the court to accept the recommendation of the bar, that the courts should cease operation so that lawyers and judges will have the opportunity to attend gatherings such as this. It's not to give the opportunity for a recess for folks. We do it because we want that there should be attendance at these meetings. And maybe I will push it, even if it doesn't occur before I leave, but I will certainly push it. That when the court determines that there should be a recess of the courts to these things, for this kind of occasion, that lawyers and judges who do not attend will be penalized. Make it a matter of a judicial order. Because for the topics, for the topics that are being discussed today, listening to them, you need to have the attendance of all the lawyers. I mean, these are the kinds of things that are beneficial to lawyers, to judges, and for us to say, do not have courts, and the judge stays away, and the lawyer, there may be some who will have excuses, yes, but when you just stay away because you don't have to be in court, it's ridiculous. So, and just as you have concurred, she and I, that we will introduce that for the full bench and get a judicial order so that there will be that requisite attendance of lawyers and judges at this kind of assembly. I'm making it, like I said before, nobody forces me to come over here, but I come because I love the bar, because I love the law. And when people don't do these kinds of things, you have to force them to do it. You have to have some second thoughts about whether they're in there for the benefit, it supports them, or whether they're in there because they want to make a contribution. Here, the Vice Speaker talked about the interest that the bar should show in these ongoing debates. And I've raised the issue at almost every bar meeting that I attended. The need for the bar to be able to speak to some of these ongoing issues. When the bar remains silent, then those who are not even lawyers are the folks who are controlling the public view. You listen to the radio and you hear these non-lawyers, you hear people who sometimes are handed into school telling you about the law. You know, and in fact, because those issues that you made mention of, and I don't know whether you are failing to it, because I would think that before that kind of legislation is passed, there will be that confirmed. You want to confer with the Banking Association. You want to confer with all of the folks. You want to confer with the Central Bank. The Minister of Finance must be able to contribute. All of these people who will be able to look at and analyze the impact of that legislation, they will be able to bring to bear on you their views. And that will inform you of whether that kind of step needs to be taken, that at least in the short term will create the kinds of problems that you have outlined that we have. And maybe if the president had been fully informed by our economic team, even if the legislature still proceeded to pass this act, the president has that constitutional authority to veto this. The veto would have focused the problems. So when you talk about it, yes, we can look at it, we can appreciate it, but like I said, it leaves me with the impression that there was a weak economic team. And she had the Minister of Finance, the Governor of the Central, and all of these people doing this thing went through. Thank you.